Ready? You're listening to Give God 90 live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Here we go. Welcome everyone to Give God 90 live on a Thursday night. I'm kind of laughing at Myra because a second ago she was watching herself in the camera and doing her hair, so didn't realize you could do it like that. But yeah, I guess you can. I don't have that to worry about because I don't have any hair left, so we're good there. Thank you for joining us for a little while this evening. We are live on a Thursday night. My name is Jerry Mitchell. Myra's with me.
Hi.
She's actually on time and, well, not well rested, but you didn't work. You didn't go to work today.
Right.
So you did twice as much as you usually do. Right. We all know how that happens. Getting caught up and all that kind of stuff. What we're looking at this evening is going to be something that's really important, and we've talked about this, something I've alluded to, but never directly said anything about it, and that's being influential. Are we called to be influential? Can we be influential? How do we be influential? So, as we look at that, it's going to reveal, I hope, something very important that you're going to want to know. And, oops.
I am good.
You good? Okay. All right. But before we get there, let me remind you, if you haven't downloaded the Give God 90 app, please do so. It's free for your Apple or Android device. Gives you all kinds of good ways to go back and just turn it down. To go do your thing. And what we can do with that is you can go back and search the archives, and you can get notified when these podcasts first show up. There's people watching from all over the world, not all at the same time, not all from the same countries, but there's folks watching. That's you. There's folks watching from all over the world. We have people in places. Well, we have people that I cannot pronounce their names, and I'm not even going to try.
But we are thrilled to have them.
And like I say, they don't always watch live. They don't watch all the time. Most of the time, they get this on Spreaker because it is audio. Mm-hmm. And, whatever your favorite podcast outlet is, we should be on it. So there you go. But yeah, we have folks from Burma, Ukraine, Uganda, Great Britain, Brazil, all over the world.
Australia.
I don't know. I know there's people from Australia that have been on the website, but I don't know if they regularly listen. I haven't checked that.
Okay.
I don't know why, I just haven't. Speaking of website, I got a report back this week. Thank you folks for going to the website and actually clicking the links there. You're doing that, and every time you go through our website to get somewhere, it comes back and says they went through your website to get here. And we are thrilled that you're doing that as well. Folks from all over the world doing that too.
Oh, good.
Lots of folks from China. I guess when you can't get out, you sit on the computer and you surf the web because they are currently stuck. So hopefully they'll see something they like and order something.
Right.
That'd be nice. Hopefully they'll hear something they like. Actually, I did see there was a news report where there is a Christian organization or a Christian group in China during the coronavirus outbreak who are out, and they are actually putting their faith where it belongs. They're out on the street and they are serving others. So
that's awesome.
Thankfully for them, they're doing that.
Awesome.
So, was there any other advertising we needed to do?
Your books?
Oh, the books. I keep forgetting to mention the books. Don't forget, if you're looking for a gift for somebody, either Tradition to Truth or God's Universe, God's Rules, either one will help you understand why what you read in your Bible isn't what you're hearing when somebody's preaching in the pulpit quite often. If they don't match up, which is probably why you're listening to this anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because hopefully I don't say anything that I can't back up in Scripture.
I hope not.
I hope not too, because that's what I'm putting my money on. That way we know, because if you can back it up in Scripture without having to twist anything, that way you know you're right, and you're going to see that in just a few minutes. Tonight, are you being influential? Or are you being influenced? Boy, there's a mouthful right there. When I was researching, I'm actually teaching for Messianic Delaware for a couple of weeks, and I'm looking at Revelation, but not in the way that typical people look at Revelation. I don't look for different answers to the same questions that everybody's asking. I change the question. And one of the things I'm looking at, I'm approaching Revelation from the standpoint of separating fact from fiction. And, what do we know for sure versus what are the legends, what are the traditions, what's all this stuff that we think we know? And one of the things that I discovered was just exactly how influential at that point they were Jews, mainly, the Judean tribes, after the return from the Babylonian exile, how influential they were to the Greeks. And what we see is the Greek writings, around 400 to 500 BC, they introduced another new god. And what we see around 200 or so BC is this god takes on some characteristics that were obviously influenced by the Jewish community, which probably helped lead to the Maccabean revolt, because the Maccabean revolt, as you remember, came about because the Greeks basically were trying to squash the Jewish religious system at the time. And they rebelled, and we have Hanukkah today to thank for that. Or as a result of that, I should say. So the Jews were a huge influence on the Greeks, and the Greeks didn't like it. So they tried to squash that religious system. It didn't work. Whenever you are in opposition to the Creator, it's not a good place to be. You don't even want to go there. But what I started thinking about was just how influential we can express ourselves, not only as believers living in the United States, but believers living in Burma or Uganda or Ukraine or China, wherever you happen to be. Because this isn't always a religious influence. It's not always a political influence. It is a humanity influence. Mm-hmm. I had this conversation today. We were talking to a fella, and he was talking about the different types of people there are in the world. And I said, if we just treated people like people, we could be okay. And he's like, well, yeah, that's all we got to do. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of surprising that I just said it like that. But when we go back, and of course, I go back to Genesis because, well, the answers are typically always going to be in Genesis, right? I mean, it's true. That's where they are, but that name's already been taken, so I can't use that name. But that's where the answers are, typically in Genesis. If we look at Genesis 6, verses 12 and 13, it says, God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Now, why did he go to Noah? Because Noah was the only righteous person he could find. Noah had not been influenced by the rest of the world. So what we see here is this is a two-way street. Mm-hmm. you can either have influence or you can be influenced by something else. So for Noah, he was in a position where he wasn't influenced by all the evil in the world or all the wickedness in the world. God looked at him and he says, I might not have much to choose from, but there's Noah. It's like, I don't know about this, but there he is. Let's use him. So he uses Noah to build an ark. Now, that probably wasn't popular. People look at him and he's building this big boat and they're like, where are you going with that thing? Well, I don't know where I'm going with it. Well, why are you building it? Because I was told to build it. Well, who told you to build it? And that whole thing. Noah wasn't that much of an influence on anybody other than his family and his sons' wives. His wife and his sons and their wives, they were the only ones he had any real influence on. And he didn't really want any influence on anybody else. He was busy building a boat. So here we have Noah in his little itty-bitty corner of the world doing what he was told to do. Not a lot of people, well, there was quite a few people in the world at that time, but not like today. But here he is in this little section, and word probably traveled a little bit for a little while, and the people who didn't really know him didn't care. They heard about crazy Uncle Noah. Everybody's got the crazy uncle, right? Mm-hmm. There's crazy Uncle Noah. Now, after the flood, not long after the flood at that, we come up to Abraham and Lot. And they had rebuilt some cities, and they were doing some things. If you want to read Genesis 18, beginning in verse 22, and go all the way to 33. And what you're going to hear is how to be influential.
22 to 33.
22 to 33.
Then the men turned from there and went towards Sodom. But Abraham was still standing before Adonai. Abraham drew near and said, "Will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you really sweep away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to cause the righteous to die with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked share the same fate. Far be it from you. Shall the judge of the whole world not exercise justice?" Then Adonai said, "If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham answered and said, "Look, pray, I have decided to speak to my Lord, though I am dust and ashes. Suppose the 50 righteous are lack 5. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 there." So he spoke to him yet again and said, "Perhaps 40 will be found there." And he said, "I will not do it for the sake of 40. Then he said, "Please, let my Lord not be angry, so I may speak. Perhaps 30 will be found there." And he said, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." And then he said, "Look, pray, I have decided to speak to my Lord. Perhaps 20 will be found there." And he said, "I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. Then he said, "Please, let not my Lord be angry, so I may speak once more. Perhaps 10 will be found there." And he said, "I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. Now, when he had finished speaking to Abraham, Adonai left, and Abraham returned to his place.
All right. So what we see is something most people don't look at it this way. A lot of people and a lot of titles in Bibles will have Abraham's intercession, or Abraham intercedes. Well, Abraham is sort of interceding, but he's not interceding the way these titles, some of them, I think I remember seeing one that said, Abraham intercedes on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. He wasn't interceding on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. He was not even bargaining for the 50 or the 40 or the 10 righteous men. what Abraham's doing is he's having some influence, and he's using his position as being able to speak directly with God. And he says, well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask. Don't get mad at this, but let me ask. The key here is the one who asks the questions controls the conversation. Abraham is being so influential, he's saying, what about these righteous people? If there are any, do you think Abraham knew that there was some? Now, he knew Lot and his family were there, right? Mm-hmm. But he's saying, for 10? Are you going to destroy this for 10? No, if there's 10, I won't. And when the angels went into Sodom and they figured out there wasn't 10 righteous people in the whole city. I don't know how big the city was at that time, but it was apparently pretty big. And he says, well, there's not 10 in here, so let's take these few, Lot and his wife and their 2 daughters, and we're going to leave. So it turns out that the daughters were not all that righteous, right? Mm-hmm. So if they weren't all that righteous, the only one they really saved would have been Lot.
Right.
So for the sake of one, and he was taken out before the city was destroyed. But the whole point is that I'm looking at from the angle I want to look at it is that Abraham was able to be influential. Not with a politician, not with another religious leader, because I don't think we could really call God a religious leader, could we?
No.
Don't think so. He wasn't influential with any other people. He was influential with the creator of the universe. That is power. Mm-hmm. That is powerful. When Abraham is asking these questions and he's bargaining down the righteous people, and he say, but if there's 10, what about this? No, Abraham, you win. Right? Mm-hmm. That's basic. And God knew what he was going to do. Let's just face facts. God understood where Abraham was coming from.
And he knew what he was going to ask.
And he knew, right. But Abraham needed to be the one. And it's interesting, and I could go a long time about that passage because there's so many things that are packed in there. But the thing is, Abraham's asking questions. Abraham's doing what he needs to do to accomplish what he sets out to accomplish. He wasn't influenced by the rest of the world. He was there to influence the world. In Exodus 19, 3-6, Moses went up to God, and the Creator called to him from the mountain and said, say this to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you listen closely to my voice and keep my covenant, then you will be my own treasure from among all people on the earth, for the earth is mine. So as for you, you will be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy people. The original does not say nation. The original says, believe it or not, goyim, which is typically translated as Gentile. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. He says, you're going to be a holy people. These are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. They agreed. They said, okay, we'll do this. Now, when it says nation of priests, it's not, we don't want to get in our heads that we go door to door, knocking on the door, beating in the people's head that they need to follow God. This whole concept of nation of priests is being a representative. That's what a priest really is a representative. When we agree to place our faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we agree not to be influenced by the world, but to influence the world. Not of our own mind, not from what comes out of us, but because we represent the Almighty Himself. We agree to be a positive influence. We agree to represent life, not death. And we're not all called to beat. We're not all called to beat up others, right? Mm-hmm. Remember the Crusades? And I used to joke about the Crusades where it was convert or we'll kill you. That's what people take this as. The folks who knock on your door and want to browbeat you and just shame you into a faith system that you might not be ready for, or that might not be real. Mm-hmm. It might be man's doctrine. You have to be aware of that. You can't be influenced by that. And we're to be a living example. Just as Yeshua was our example, we are supposed to be a living example for everyone else. We are supposed to show people how to live. They're supposed to look at us and say, I don't know what it is about you, but there's something about you and I want it. Mm-hmm. Because the way you live, you are supposed to be receiving God's blessings, and you are supposed to be, hopefully living the way you're designed to live so that you can recognize and use those blessings properly. Now, something I brought up the other night at Messianic Delaware. It was 1789 after the Constitutional Convention. A lady asked Ben Franklin. She says, well, Mr. Franklin, what have you given us, a republic or a monarchy? And he looked at this lady and said, Madam, it is a republic if you can keep it. Now, that lady's name was Elizabeth Willing Powell. A lady, a female person, living person, at the time could not vote. How in the world could this lady be influential in a form of government where she had no say? She literally had no say. She could not cast a ballot and do anything. How could she be influential? It was easy for her. She knew what she needed to do. She had enough faith that she could play a role. She would serve these fancy luncheons and fancy dinners. She would talk to people. She was involved. The men who were making the decisions, most of them were married, or the ones who weren't married were courting, what they called courting at the time. They were dating. They were visiting the local ladies, and she would influence the local ladies, and she would be this influence in that aspect. And what she was doing was, now she was politically active, right? Mm-hmm. And she, in fact, she was so politically active and such an influence, many people believe that the day she died is the day that the Republic actually started to crumble. That was a long time ago. But that's how influential she was. She wasn't one to sit back and let something happen and then complain about it. She was there to stop whatever she thought was wrong, while it was working, while it was in the works, before anything had happened. She was involved. There wasn't any doubt that she was involved. There was a church that we used to go to, and before we started going there, they actually built what they call their fellowship hall. It's actually now a thrift store. But excuse me, when the church was going through the concepts of, do we want it, and if we build it, how big can it be, there was this one fellow who passed away before we started going there, and he was dead set against it. I mean, he was just dead set against it. Hated the whole idea. But the day they started work, guess who was there helping? Mm-hmm. He was right there. I mean, and somebody asked him, said, you voted against this. What are you here for? He said, well, the rest of the church wants it, so I'm here to help. Mm-hmm. He was influential, but you know what? Even when things didn't go his way, he was willing to help. He wasn't actually influenced, but they tell me that before he died, he realized that really was a good idea. So don't think that just because you think things ought to be one way, the Almighty might say, nah, you know what? What you really want to be looking at's over here. Don't look, 10 feet in front of you. Look 50 feet down the road. Don't look in the next week. Look in the next year. What Franklin was telling that lady when he said, a republic if you can keep it, was actually biblical information. It comes from the Bible. And he gets it, I think, a little bit from Abraham, because Abraham was influential. He's telling her, don't be afraid to use your influence where you can. Abraham wasn't afraid to use his influence where he could use it. Franklin's telling her, use your influence. Do what you can do, excuse me, to keep the republic. It's biblical advice. Mm-hmm. The old guy from that church, he was realizing that his influence wasn't making a difference. And what he had to do was back up and look further down the road. But he realized, just how good something could be after he actually had a chance to see it. But knowing that age group and knowing a little bit about that family, I can understand why he was a little hard-headed at first. There's a community in a country that I can't say, because they are in danger every day. They are influential in their country. There is a small group completely surrounded by Muslim. And there has been an offer to relocate these folks. And they don't want to be relocated. Now, it's not because that's their home, and they can't leave. They don't have anywhere to go. They've been offered places to go, places to stay. They can stay together if they want. They said, no, we don't need to leave. We don't have to go anywhere. And the biggest reason they stay is because there's such an influence where they are that they're actually converting ISIS fighters to Christianity. That's influence. That's influence. That is them displaying their faith. Now, they're not out there holding picket signs, right? They're not marching up and down the street. That's a good way for them to get killed. Mm-hmm. They are being influential in a way that they can be influential. The folks in China, they're not out there. Well, the Hong Kong protesters were out there with signs and things, right? They were trying to be influential. That didn't work out so well for some of them. But these folks, they have to be influential in a covert kind of a way. Mm-hmm. They can't be in your face. They have got to be the ones who display that love and that grace from the Creator so that you see it and it's plain where it comes from. It amazes me because every time we talk about being influential, especially in the United States, people think about protest, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what can we do? We've got to write letters. We've got to... You don't have to do that. You simply have to be involved. And that means involved with other people, something I usually don't like to do sometimes. Because some people, let's face it, are irritating, right? They rub you the wrong way. Or they do me. And I don't think I'm alone here. I'm not talking about going out and holding a sign in front of a building. I'm not talking about being the one who goes somewhere and does something where 1,000 people are going to be looking at you and pointing at you. What I'm talking about is going through your everyday motions, being influential to other people. Not hiding in a hole and waiting for people to come to you. Getting out, where people actually can see you, where you can do things, where you're involved, like we were today with just one person because it was just a nasty rainy day. But there's a lot of times when you're at the hospital, you're involved with people all the time. Mm-hmm. When I'm out, I have to be involved with people all the time.
Oh, such a struggle.
It is sometimes. especially in the one store that our granddaughter, long story. I'm not going there. But there's people, have the opportunity to talk to you. I actually speak to more people in checkout lines because I refuse to use those stupid self-checkout things. And I like to think I was an influence the other day on somebody about that because, the lady said, well, the self-checkout's open. And I said, yeah, but if I wait for this person who actually needs a job, it means, her job means something. Those machines, they don't care. This person, I can have some, or at least try to give her some dignity in her job, I guess is a good way to say it. Give her some, I don't want to say usefulness because she already has a job and she's there, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Because if nobody used the real checkout person and they all go to the machine, then she would lose her job, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking out for humanity is a good way to put that, I guess. And for the folks in foreign countries, yes, there is a thing where they have machines that allow you to walk out of a store after you pay for your items, but you actually pay a machine. It's a little desk-looking thing with a computer interface, and it swipes your credit card, you do your thing, and go on about your business. But when you do that, you're denying someone the opportunity of employment. Mm-hmm. They've been replaced by a machine.
We do not use those whatsoever.
And we don't use them. I hate those things.
We'll stand in line with one item for 20 minutes.
The store doesn't pay me enough to use those things. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, if they're going to pay me to check myself out, that's a different story. If they're going to reduce their prices about 30 or 40% for me to check out, that's a different story. Mm-hmm. But they're not doing that. So we try to make sure that people are, at least when I'm there, they know that when I'm there, I'm going to find a live person. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we're going to go protest. It's not that we're going to, we need to write letters and boycott this and do that. No, you don't have to do that.
Sometimes it helps. Sometimes
you can, especially in the United States, we have that opportunity. Not every country does. But where you choose to do these things is equally important.
Right.
There's Yehuda Glick in Israel. Wasn't allowed on the Temple Mount for 3 years. He was a member of their parliament, the Knesset. He wasn't allowed on the Temple Mount because the police kept banning him from going up there because they knew when he went up there he would pray. Not to protest, but because that's what you were supposed to do when you ascended the Temple Mount. You were supposed to pray. He was doing what he was supposed to do. So they wouldn't let him go. It's those little things. But his way of getting around that was he would be at the bottom of the Temple Mount. He's like, I'm supposed to be up there. This is as good as I can do. This is where I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. The folks in China who are out on the street in the middle of a coronavirus outbreak, they're doing what they can do while they can do it.
That's it.
They're not being influenced by the world. They are attempting to influence the world by their actions. They're involved. They're doing things. Every day that we wake up, we're given the capability to present ourselves as a representative to the Almighty. And we do that not for us, we do that for the people around us. We have a chance to influence other people, and we should hopefully be utilizing that chance or using that chance in a positive way. We don't want to be influenced by the world, we want to influence the world. Now, the way that we maintain being a representative for our Creator is to maintain a biblical lifestyle, to live the way we are instructed to live by the Almighty, not by man. Not doing things our way, doing things His way. We don't follow the enemy's instructions, we follow our Creator's instructions. And He gives us our instructions so that when we follow them, we are not influenced by the ways of the world. Because when we follow his instructions, that should put the focus back on him and not on us. It was given to us, I could mess it up really easy. That wouldn't be any trouble for me to mess it up. But if I always have those instructions in my mind, not in the back of my mind, in front of my mind, where they're always there, that's what gives us the opportunity to influence the world without being corrupted by the world. When we're involved in the world as representatives for our Creator, we're going to be ridiculed. Noah was ridiculed. Abraham was ridiculed. It comes with the territory. Because the world hates. The world hates anyone who disagrees with the world. And if you don't believe it, just look at any group who denies their Creator. And not only, they'll gang up against the people who follow God, but then when they're done beating them up, they'll beat each other up because they hate each other. Because, on one hand, you've got, this guy, I'm the greatest. No, this guy, I'm the greatest. And it just doesn't work like that. When you think about, and I hate to go to politics with this, but we're going to go to politics with this. When you look at what happens when politicians, you have all of these people, and when they've done beating up on the opposing party, then they fight amongst themselves because every one of them wants to do things their own way. It's not like, the fellow I used as an example in the church a while ago, where he wasn't influential enough to change the people to his opinion, so it went the other way, right? And when it went the other way, he was willing then to work with them. But that doesn't happen in politics today. When something goes wrong, well, I'm out the door. I'm going somewhere else. I'll start my own party. I'll do things my own way. I don't care anymore. Don't be fooled or deceived or get caught up in the world's hate. You don't have to do that. You can rise above that. Remember, if there's just one righteous person, right? Genesis chapter 6, God looks around, he goes, I'm looking for one. Oh, it's Noah? It's Noah? Okay, I'll use Noah. Today, I have no idea where he'd go find a righteous person today. No idea. Every country has its own trouble. It's not just the United States. It's not just, Great Britain just got done with a 3 or 4 year fight. 4-year fight. Started in 2016 where they're going to remove themselves from the European Union. 4 years of listening to bickering back and forth. Brexit. That's all you heard was Brexit. After 4 years, it's finally resolved and finally settled. And they're still fighting because they're politicians. Each one wants to do things his own way. If they would stop doing it their own way and do it the way the Almighty intended for it to be done, they'd understand and it'd go a whole lot easier for them.
It would have been done by now.
It'd have been done by now, a long time ago. We should be a positive biblical influences in the communities that we live in. Not just because it's the right thing to do. And not, standing in front of City Hall holding a sign that says pro-life. You know what? If you got time to stand in front of a sign, in front of a building with a sign that says pro-life, you have time to put the sign down, walk down the street to the pro-life building, and learn how to counsel those folks going to the other building. Right? Hey, there's Pam.
Hey, Pam. Welcome.
If you have time to stand in front of a building with a sign, you have time to go be a positive influence so you don't have to stand in front of that building with a sign. How's that sound? If you have time to complain after the fact, you didn't do enough before the fact. Today we look around and people are complaining about prayer in school, they're complaining about abortion, they're complaining about all these other things. When a lot of that started, I was, 4 or 5 years old? Because I don't remember the exact dates of those. But anyway, I wasn't old enough to have any real influence. So I can blame parents and grandparents on a little bit of that for not being involved enough. We can blame our fathers for a lot of the things. Or I shouldn't say just our fathers, our grandfathers, grandmother, the folks that came before us. We can blame them for a lot of things, but we got to take some blame too for not working harder at being active and being influential. And like I say, if you got time to stand there and hold a sign, you got time to volunteer and go do something better, more important. Because it's not all about protesting in the United States. All over the world, people are, they're doing what they can do with what they have to work with. It all depends on who we are, where we live, and what gifts the Almighty has given to you. You remember, Elizabeth Powell served a whole lot of meals. It was because of her that George Washington served 2 terms as president instead of 1. He only wanted to serve 1 term. She convinced him to serve 2. The community in that Muslim country displays love for its enemies. It goes out. Those people go out there. They can't read their Bible. They can't even own a Bible. Mm-hmm. They can't say a Christian prayer out loud. I don't even know if they would be allowed to skip their call to prayer, their Muslim call to prayer in their country. I don't know how that works, where they're at. Excuse me. But the thing is, they are there, and they are influential, and they are converting Muslims to Christianity. Not every day, not every week, but enough of them that they're staying where they are. So what will you do to be an influence? How will you be a positive biblical influence? A lot of times people in the United States get confused and they say, well, we can't be an influence in our political system. Yes, you can. As an individual, you absolutely, certainly can. Get to know the people in your community because it starts in your community. It doesn't start, with the White House in the United States. It doesn't start at number 10 Downing Street in Great Britain. All right? It starts in your community. And it starts a lot of times with your neighbor. It starts a lot of times with the people where you go to the grocery store. It starts a lot of times just as you're going down the street. It's that simple. If you can be an influence to the people you meet around you, that's who you're supposed to influence. Go ahead and go to these little meetings that they have. The United States holds them all the time. We missed one 2 weeks ago because we had someplace else to be. I was actually teaching that day for Leah. But there was a meet and greet for one of the ladies that's going to run against one of our elected officials. And more power to her because he's the one that really needs to get out of there. But anyway, that's my opinion because, quite honestly, he's not smart enough to be where he's at. An empty seat would really be more beneficial. And I'm not. That is another thing. We watched the State of the Union in the United States the other night. And here's the thing. And I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, left, right, it doesn't matter. This year, elect people. And what I'm going to say is going to sound funny coming from me. I don't care if you're a Democrat, elect a Democrat. If you're a Republican, elect a Republican. But please run people who actually have some respect for humanity. Mm-hmm. At least have these folks that you're going to send to represent you in a way that you would be proud to be represented.
Right.
Because what I saw the other night...
Oh, that was an insult to anybody and everybody that ever voted for them.
Any of them.
Anybody.
That was... I can almost
It almost made me ashamed to say I'm an American.
Yeah.
It really did.
The thing is, Great Britain just gained their independence. Mm-hmm. They're starting out kind of, in a way, parallel way, to where we were a couple hundred years ago.
Right.
They're feeling their independence. We're sitting here going, oh, we have to do this again, and we're just bickering back and forth. Elect some folks with some integrity, some respect for humanity. We need the differing opinions, because different if you're stagnant, you're stagnant. If everybody thought the way I did, let's face it, I'd be bored too. But anyway, we need that differing set of opinions. But at the same, just like the guy in the church, he had a different opinion than the other folks. But when it all come down to it, he was willing, and we don't have that willingness anymore. They just want to stand there and fight. And if I don't get my way, I'm out the door. Be a positive influence. Be a positive influence. If you need to be a positive influence in your community, you know what? There's a drug epidemic and I have spoken on this several times. Y'all know that I think an overdose is nothing more than an attempted suicide, and there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of police officers and a lot of counselors who agree with me. You need to be involved. Don't just sit back and say, well, those folks need to get Jesus in their life. Because you don't realize what you're saying when you say that. You really don't.
They can't just get Jesus.
They have to live those instructions that he represents. Go to those counseling centers. Volunteer. They would be happy to guide you in ways that you don't have to be involved with the addicts either. They have other things that you can do that you can volunteer in those places. There's always something to do. There's always somebody to serve, and there's always a way that you can use the skills the Almighty has given you to fit into those ways. Don't think for a second that it's easier to sit back and let something bad happen and then complain about it later. Be involved and prevent it from happening to start with. That's how you be an influence. That's, and if everybody would just treat people like people.
The way God commanded us.
The way the Almighty designed us to be, and the way he tells us to do it, we would be so much better off. And I just looked at the clock, and I am way over time of what I was going to do. But anyway, it doesn't matter, because y'all needed to hear this. Whenever you're listening, wherever you're listening from, we certainly do appreciate everyone giving us the time to listen and be part of what we're doing. We thank you so much for it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to look at the statistics I see, the messages I get from all over the world. Even if I can't pronounce your name, I apologize. I really do. But some of those names, I really, 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 love you to death. Wish. And by the way, if you're going to take time to message me and you have, how do I want to say it? A name that a redneck can't pronounce, give me a phonetic pronunciation. We'd
love to be able to pronounce your name.
It would
appropriately.
It would be nice to. You saw the one name today. It is like, how do you say that? I don't know, but it was about 17 letters long, and I'm not kidding.
And it would be a joy if we knew how to pronounce it properly.
It would be really, really nice if I knew how to pronounce some of these. But seriously,
we love having you on.
Love you, have you listen. Keep listening. Keep hitting those like buttons. Keep hitting those share buttons, folks. Around the world is a big place, but it's getting smaller. Getting smaller. Wonderful community. Love to have you along for the ride. Appreciate everything y'all do for us. And we will see you next week.
That's right.
Have a wonderful, wonderful, blessed
well.
week, everyone. Take care. And, oh, by the way, Pam, stay safe on your trip if I don't have a chance to talk to you.
Yes, be safe.
Take care, everyone.